than I do, even though this is what I do for a living. So all of you are actually in the best position to help other people deal with this illness. And those of us who do this for a living should be helping you to do that in a way that is organized and constructive. So it really is, it should be much more collaborative.
I have a question.
So yes?
If, when you look at marriage and relationships in the general public, populace, if you will, 50% of them are in trouble.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, how does one look at a relationship that's 50% in trouble anyway, or they are? Then what effect does the chronic disease part play? And how does one separate the fact that, boy, I might have had trouble with my relationships. Now I add this.
Right.
If I just cure this side of it, the other side will be okay, or vice versa.
Right. You know, and it's hard to do that because, of course, every single relationship is unique. And very often, you know, let's face it, when our emotions are involved in something, figuring all that out is not the easiest thing in the world. So that's where someone like me comes in handy, hopefully. And it's people are so complicated that it's rarely just one thing, one problem. That the relationship was bad or it was fine, and then the illness came along, and that's what caused all the problems. We're too complicated for it to be that simple. So I rarely find that that's the case. And, you know, all it takes is one out of those two people to have difficulty with coping, and things can, because maybe of their early experiences or how they learned how to deal with stress in their family or, you know, whatever. And that's all it takes. The other partner could be very well-intentioned and willing to do, you know, whatever the issues may be, but it can still make it really difficult. So it takes a lot of work to figure out, you know, what came first and then second, and what's precipitated what, and what's exacerbated what. And the hard part about that is that people need to be willing, and it's very difficult, people need to be willing to take a good hard look at themselves. And that's a hard thing to do. People are, we're all not very good at that, to be perfectly honest.
I noticed too, I haven't seen the word guilt anywhere in any of this stuff. And I'm just curious, is that a separate topic altogether, guilt, or is that embedded in the words as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And you know, so just think about what you all deal with you know, with Kennedy's. You know, guilty over what? You didn't cause anything. It's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault that someone has MS. It's nobody's fault that somebody has Parkinson's. It's nobody's fault that somebody has some other chronic illness that's genetic or otherwise. The guilt is enormous because, again, I think men and women, we are socialized to not have problems. We're supposed to be perfect. When we're not, it's our fault. Yes, sir?
That's true, but I have a hard time convincing my mom. She feels guilty for caring.
You know, yeah, and
I told her the same thing. It's not her fault.
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm perfectly happy to share a personal experience of my own with you. Breast cancer runs heavily on my mom's side of the family. My mom was diagnosed when she was 40, and she was pregnant. I was a baby. And then her sister, my aunt, was diagnosed for the first time when she was in her mid-50s. And then again when she was in her 60s. And my mother was diagnosed again 3 years ago at the age of 83. I was diagnosed at 35. I dreaded making that phone call to my mother because I knew exactly what she was going to say. I did this to you. And that's exactly what she said to me. It's my fault. And she had a very, very hard time with that. And still brings it up, actually. even though that was longer ago than I care to say. And I'm fine, and she's fine, we're all fine. But moms, is that what you do?
Do they blame their mothers for their condition?
Well, in my mom's case, it started with her. No, my grandmother, to my knowledge, although they're not sure, but it was my grandparents came from Italy, and so the whole extended family was there, and I don't think they knew if it went back any farther than that. So I think that added to it too. She thought somehow, it started with her, and she did, but the guilt was pretty significant.
But the thing is, with the
I
new
get to it. That's okay.
with the new BRAC gene things that they have.
Right.
My sister-in-law has a family full of people with BRAC genes.
Right.
And so forth. Do you see much more of that now that we know some of these genes? Do you see people coming to you who make a huge responsibilities to make decisions about whether to keep their breasts, and
Right.
men have it? And there's
Yeah.
all sorts of things that go on with that.
Yeah, sometimes knowing more makes it harder, because then you have to decide what to do. And I remember, just to say this briefly, and then we'll get back to all of you. I remember my doctor telling me, you have these options. And I said, well, the option that you're not telling me about is to decide for myself. And that's what I'm going to do. And that's what I did. But more information sometimes can make it more confusing, because then we have to do the right thing. We have to make the right choice. What is that? I don't know. Yes, you have a comment.
Back to feeling guilty. I don't feel guilty because I've got this. It happens.
Okay.
I mean, I could have got cancer, I could have got this, I could have got that,
Right.
and I got this. What I sometimes personally feel guilty about is that I used to be able to do so much more for myself.
Right.
Move out of an apartment or something like that. Now you're gonna have 7 or 8 people show up.
Right.
Who are more than willing to help.
Right.
You feel guilty that you can't help. I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but that's where a lot of my personal guilt.
No, that's understandable.
That I've got
That really is
to
understandable.
rely more on other people.
So, do you reliably have 7 or 8 people that will show up and help you do stuff?
No. Not always.
5 or 6?
Sometimes. If I'm lucky.
4 or 5?
No. But
If you do, you're doing pretty good.
I don't.
I have 3 sons, and my wife makes them show up.
Okay. I would be willing to bet that they show up,
They
right?
show
They
up.
would just show up
They
anyway,
show
right?
up.
Because you're their dad and they
They
love
show
you.
up, exactly
Okay.
right. They do.
Let's say the truth here now,
There we go.
Dad.
Don't lie to
Okay.
the God,
All right.
right?
Okay. Guilt is a really, I mean, we could easily find lots of things to feel guilty about in the course of our daily lives if we were perfectly healthy. Because we're always having to measure up to some standard of something that none of us can measure up to. This is the root of advertising. The purpose of advertising is to make you feel bad about who you're not or what you don't have. And we're bombarded with it all the time. Yes, sir.
I think the thing that I realized most, and it came like because of Kennedy's disease, all of us men have a problem with falling.
Yes.
And I took it as you get confident that you can walk,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you stumble and fall, it's ego busting. Right?
Sure.
And the same thing with getting help.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that I can't do anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come to that realization that I have to ask. And I think there's a lot of men around here that
Well,
say
you know,
the macho generation, I
well,
can do it
but
myself.
that goes back to what I was saying about society. Where'd you learn that? Society taught you that that's what you were supposed to be. And that's terrible.
Right.
That's unfair.
So
Okay?
I just
Because as far as I can tell, you still have a Y chromosome, you're still a man, right? So that hasn't changed. So what is there to
I was
feel
the
bad
one that would come home from work in the wintertime, shovel the sidewalk or
Right.
mow the grass,
Right.
and now I have to ask someone to do
But
it.
what really the way to think about it is you have chosen to ask people to help.
That's correct.
You don't have to. You could isolate yourself
Yeah.
and just say, I don't know, you know, but you've chosen to ask for help. So that shows a level of resiliency already. Does that help?
Yes, very much so.
It helps
But-
because, so that's that emotion focus.
Yeah.
Because we're thinking differently about how it feels.
There's nothing that I can do to change my situation.
Except how you let it
How
impact
I
you.
live.
How you do it from here up. Right, that's right.
And the
Yes.
thing about asking people to help is I'm always pleasantly surprised by how willing people are
Sure.
who want to help me. And
There are
you
more
don't
good
think
people
about
in the world than
That's
we
right.
like to think.
That's right. You fall over perfect.
We never hear about them because it's not newsworthy. But there are a lot of people out there who would love nothing more than to help.
And it makes them feel really good.
Absolutely.
Really good.
Absolutely.
You know, they can go home and feel
It's a
that.
good antidepressant.
Boy
It's another
Scout.
one you don't need a prescription. Okay. There are some resources that you might find interesting and helpful. This book, you can get it on Amazon. It's about $9, something like that. I can't remember when it came out, but it's actually supposed to be quite good. It's written by a nurse who took care of her husband through the 16-year course of his Parkinson's disease. And some of these other websites are also quite helpful. And if wherever you live, you know, if you think you want to pursue some specific help for you or your spouse or your family, one of the best places to start is with your state psychology licensing board. Because in most cases you can put in, you know, what specialty you're looking for, what area you live in, and they can provide you with names of practitioners in that area that you can then contact. I also put the National MS Society website up here. Obviously, it's not the same thing, but as I mentioned multiple times, you know, clearly they help many, many people with a debilitating degenerative disorder that affects mobility. It also affects cognition. And they have a lot of good information on their website that I think you'd be able to apply to your own situation. Okay? So those things might, and I will, if you don't write them down, I can give those to you and you can share the information. Okay. Well, I thank you all very much. I hope this was helpful. I hope you had a chance to get out there and see all this stuff. Have a good time.
What does it mean?
That means let the good times roll.
All right.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Has everyone had beignets already? You had some beignets? Yeah, oh, you gotta have beignets. And they actually, Cafe Du Monde makes the best hot chocolate.
The best.
I've ever tasted
That's where you guys
on the
live?
planet. Did you have it?
We have to go back.
It's like a religious experience.
The hot chocolate.
It's the best hot chocolate in the world.
Huh.
It's on Decatur Street.
Yeah.
Decatur Street.
My 5 minutes before.
Look at that. I usually talk way too much. I don't know how I did that. Okay.
Alright, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm thinking 5-minute break. Give people a chance to go to the bathroom, and then what we're gonna do is the men are gonna meet